Hi students, welcome back to CIS 121 Online Learning. This is a video which is going to help you work on Homework 8. And Homework 8 once again is using AppLab on code.org. And the new thing in this homework is using functions. And in particular, using functions with parameters. In our last homework assignment, homework 7, you'd use some functions, but they didn't have any parameters. Now you notice as I look at my turtle category, my functions have parameters. This value here, we should know from our work with Scratch, is called a parameter. It's a value that's going to be used by the function. So instead of moving forward like we did last homework, which just didn't have a parameter, it always moved the same amount. Now we can specify to move forward, say, 100 pixels. Or I can say turn right. Instead of always turning right 90 degrees, I can specify turn right 124 degrees. And I can do another move forward and go 50 pixels. So this is going to draw a line 100 pixels. It's going to turn right 124 degrees and then draw a shorter line. And when we run this, we'll see that happening. I'll slow it down a little so we can see step by step. There's each line turning. Now, that's going to be lesson 7. It's just going to be using these blocks with parameters. But what we're going to do in lesson 8 is we're going to add our own parameters to a function. Again, something we're familiar with from Scratch, but I'll do an example here. It's a little bit different, the syntax and the way you enter it in AppLab, but it's the same idea. So what I need to do is I need to define a function. I go to the functions category and pull out a function. Notice here's a function with no parameters, and here's one with a parameter. And I want to write a function that draws a rectangle. So I'll call it rectangle. And it's going to take a bunch of parameters. One thing it might take is the width. So there's our width. Now to add more parameters, there's a little arrow here that I click on. Opens up another box. So that's the width of the rectangle and maybe the height of the rectangle. And I can add others, like a color that we want it drawn with. And finally, maybe a pen width, which I'll just call wideness. And now I can go over to my turtle category and pick out functions which are going to help me draw this. So first thing I want to do is set the color and width. So I'm going to find my color, my pen color value. And you could see before we could type a value in there like red or blue, and there's another one which uses the RGB colors. Okay, but instead what I want to use is I want to use my parameter here. So instead of putting the color, I'll use the parameter color. So whatever value this parameter has is what's going to be used to set the pen color. Similarly, I want to set the pen width. And again, I'll type in the name of my parameter value. And now I'm ready to start drawing my figure. I'm going to move forward. Now when we start out, the sprite is pointing upward. So the first thing we're going to draw is the height. So I'm going to put height in here, again using the parameter instead of a constant value. Then I need to turn right. And this is going to turn 90 degrees because we're drawing a rectangle, so that's all set already. And then we're going to also draw my next line. And drawing height and width is going to be, we're going to alternate between those two. We drew the height, now we turned, and now we're drawing the width. So I'm going to type width in. And again, I need to turn 90 degrees. Now at this point, I want to repeat that process of drawing the height and width and turning 90 degrees in between. So we can use our mouse move, select that. That draws two lines with the turns. Type a Control-C, and then type a Control-V to paste it. So that's the end of my rectangle function, and that's the definition. Now I need to call it. So I'm going to go back to the functions category, and I'm going to pull out a call, and I'll pull out a call that has a parameter already in it. And it's going to call the rectangle function. And now I'm going to specify my parameters. My first parameter is going to be the width that I want to use. So I might draw it with a width 120. Next, and now I need to add more parameters, and just like I did in the definition, I can click on the arrow to add more parameters. In fact, I'll need 4 of them: the width, the height, the color, and the wideness. And now my height is going to be, I'll make it wider than it is high, so I'll make my height 40. Pick a color, use blue. And finally, I'm going to give the wideness, so maybe make it fairly thick line and make it 10. And now I can reset this and run my program. And I actually got an error there. It says, oops, we can't figure out what blue is. Perhaps you meant the string blue with quotes. And this is in fact what I meant. If those quotes aren't there, it's interpreted as a variable, and we don't have a variable named blue. So I'm going to type quote and blue. And that's the same thing you do if you type the color in the pen color area. Okay? So I'm going to slow it down a little so we can see this run. And what's going to happen? It's going to call the rectangle function. It's going to do parameter passing. 120 goes into width. 40 goes into height. Blue goes into color. And 10 goes into wideness. And then when it runs, it uses those values. So I can run it now, and it's going to draw my image. Notice it's wider than it is high, and I get that value drawn. Of course, I can call that several times if I want. Maybe I will copy that, Control-C, and paste it, and call it a second time. Maybe I'll make this not very high. I'll make it, I'm sorry, not very wide. I'll make it high. I'm hitting tabs to go to each parameter. You can click in the cells also. Let's see, let's make it high 100. Change my color from blue to, say, green. And finally, the thickness, I'll make it not as thick, 5. Now it's going to run my program, and it's going to draw 2 rectangles. One the one that was drawn before, and this one's going to be higher than it is wide, and it's going to use pen color of green, and it won't have that wide a line. So we'll give it a run there. Drawing the first rectangle, and then it's drawing the second rectangle, the green higher rectangle. So there's a little description of how to add parameters to functions and how to use those parameters. If you have any questions, let me know, and enjoy the day and keep working on those homeworks. Bye-bye.